Welcome to Revenge Blaze, the channel dedicated to real-life family drama betrayal stories and the quiet justice that comes when truth finally breaks through. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you love stories that hit close to home, the kind that make you reflect on trust family and protecting what's yours, stay with us. Don't go anywhere. The next one is going to be even more gripping and eye-opening. We never keep you waiting long. Right now, here's today's story. Mom. What do you really know about him? Why did you force me into this? My name is Whitney Sanders. I'm 31. And that night, standing in our backyard with Lake Mendota glittering behind me, I realized the man I was about to marry might be about to take everything I had. The engagement party was alive, fairy lights twinkling over the lawn glasses, clinking laughter rolling across the water in the cool end-of-summer air. 60 people, all family and friends, raising toasts to what they called the perfect match. Jared Knight, 26, 5 years younger than me, already killing it at Epic Systems with the salary. The stock options, the future everyone envied, had his arm around my waist, smiling like he owned the night. My mother, Susan, was beaming brighter than anyone, eyes shining every time she looked at us. Dad kept shaking Jared's hand, proud, as if he'd handpicked him himself. Whispers everywhere. He's the one. She's so lucky. I felt like I was suffocating under the lights. I still don't know why I said yes. Mom kept repeating, "Don't let this one get away, Whitney." After 2 relationships that left me hollow, maybe I just wanted to believe her. Maybe I was tired of being alone. Jared was charming, attentive, always saying the right thing until the cracks started showing. Halfway through the toasts, when the crowd was distracted and the music swelled, I slipped my hand free, walked straight to Mom by the garden wall and leaned in so only she could hear. "Mom," I whispered, voice shaking. "Something is wrong with my assets." She met my eyes for one heartbeat. Then she smiled, that warm, radiant smile she'd worn all evening, reached up, tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, and said softly, "You're just nervous, honey. It's a big night. Let's not spoil it." She squeezed my arm once, turned back to the party, and lifted her glass like nothing had happened, laughing with the neighbors as if the world was still golden. I stood there, wine glass heavy in my hand, watching her walk away. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. That single moment changed everything. If I didn't act right, then everything I'd built, everything Grandma left me, everything I thought was safe, could vanish. And the person holding me in front of everyone might be the one making it disappear. And then, oh my God, if you've ever had that sick feeling in your gut when the person you're supposed to trust is hiding something and no one else sees it, stay with me. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications right now. What happened next still keeps me up at night. And you need to hear every second of it. To understand how I ended up in that backyard with a ring on my finger and doubt in my chest, we have to go back a couple of years when my mother decided it was time to take matters into her own hands. Our house sits on a quiet street in Maple Bluff, one of those leafy Madison suburbs where the lawns are manicured and the lake views cost a premium. It's the kind of place where people wave from their porches and kids ride bikes until the streetlights come on. Mom Susan always kept one eye on the long game, college funds when we were small, retirement accounts when we grew up, and lately making sure her only daughter didn't end up alone with a cat and a mortgage. Dad David was the steady one, the guy who paid the bills on time and nodded along while Mom strategized. I worked as a healthcare administrator at one of the big hospitals downtown, decent pay, good benefits, predictable hours. At 31, I was comfortable. Mom thought comfortable wasn't enough. She met Jared at a networking mixer Epic Systems through for local professionals. Epic's campus is basically a tech utopia, glass buildings, walking paths, free meals, the whole Silicon Valley in Wisconsin package. Mom dragged me along because you never know who you'll meet. Jared was 26, sharp in a navy blazer, already managing a team that built software doctors actually used. He walked up, introduced himself, asked real questions about my job. Not the polite small talk kind, but the kind that made me feel seen. Mom watched from across the room with that gleam in her eye, the one she gets when she spots a good investment. By the end of the night, she was whispering, "He's young, but he's going places. Stable. Successful. The future looks bright with someone like that." Dad just shrugged and said, "Seems nice." I rolled my eyes, another setup, but something in Jared's easy confidence stuck. The pressure started small, then snowballed. Mom would text me articles about late bloomers finding love and drop lines like, "You're 31 now, Whitney." Jared's got his head on straight. "Don't let past heartbreaks make you cynical." She'd say it with that soft, worried mother tone that always made me feel like I was failing her. Dad never pushed, but his silence felt like agreement. After 2 relationships that ended in quiet disappointment, one guy who ghosted another who wanted kids yesterday, I started to wonder if Mom was right. Maybe I was being too picky. Maybe Jared really was the safe bet. So I said yes to a first date, then a second. 14 months later, we were engaged. He was good at the romance part dinners at the lakeside spots with candlelight reflecting off the water, thoughtful gifts like the scarf I'd mentioned once in passing weekend drives out to Door County when the leaves turned. He listened when I talked about work stress, remembered my grandmother's stories, even joked about how he'd have to win over my tough crowd of a family. Everyone loved him. Mom especially. She'd call me after he left C. "He's thoughtful. He cares about our future together." But little things started to nag. He'd ask casually over coffee how much Grandma had left me in the will, about 800,000 in investments and an IRA I'd barely touched. "Just curious how we'd build on it someday," he'd say, with that warm smile. I'd laugh it off. Plenty of time for that. But the questions kept coming, always wrapped in concern for our plans. Mom brushed it aside when I mentioned it once. "He's thinking long-term, honey." That's a good thing. I told myself I was overreacting, that the doubts were just old scars talking, that if I relaxed, everything would fall into place. I kept telling myself that, right up until the night of the engagement party. The next morning, I woke up with a headache that had nothing to do with the wine. Jared had already gone downstairs to make coffee. His usual routine, the one that used to feel sweet, but now seemed calculated. I lay there staring at the ceiling fan, replaying Mom's gentle dismissal over and over. She'd made it sound so simple, just nerves. But the knot in my stomach wouldn't loosen. I heard him in the kitchen humming some tune from the radio, then his footsteps heading toward the guest room, where he'd left his laptop charging overnight. Perfect timing. I slipped out of bed, padded quietly down the hall, and knocked lightly on the open door. "Hey, my laptop's dead and I need to check something for work real quick. Mind if I borrow yours for 2 minutes?" He glanced up from his phone, smiled that easy smile, and pushed the laptop toward me without hesitation. "Go ahead. Password's the same as always." I sat on the edge of the bed, heart thudding so loud I was sure he could hear it. The screen lit up. He'd left a browser tab open in the background, Google Sheets titled "Whitney Sanders, Personal Assets Valuation." My fingers froze over the trackpad. It was a detailed breakdown. Grandma's inheritance listed line by line the brokerage account with roughly 400,000 in diversified stocks. The IRA I'd rolled over from an old job, a couple of CDS I'd forgotten about, even the small savings account I kept for emergencies. There were projected growth rates, tax implications, and most chilling, a column labeled Post-Marriage Access Timeline, with dates circled in red. The total at the bottom hovered just under $800,000. My hands went ice cold. The room tilted for a second. I heard Jared coming back up the stairs with 2 mugs. I slammed the tab closed, opened a random email window, and typed nonsense into the search bar just as he walked in. "Find what you needed?" he asked, handing me a coffee. "Yeah," I managed, voice steady enough to fool him. "Just a quick thing." "Thanks." He kissed the top of my head and went to shower. I sat there holding the warm mug, feeling the heat seep into my palms while the rest of me stayed frozen. I couldn't breathe properly until I was alone in my car driving to Caitlin's place a few blocks away. Caitlin Thompson, my best friend since college, the one who always called me out when I was being too polite, opened the door in yoga pants and a messy bun. She took one look at my face and pulled me inside. What the hell happened? You look like you saw a ghost. I sank onto her couch and spilled it all, the open tab, the spreadsheet, the numbers that matched my accounts to the penny. Caitlin, I think he's targeting my money. She didn't laugh or tell me I was overreacting. She just nodded slowly. Okay. First rule, don't confront him yet. Second rule, check everything quietly. Don't let emotion cloud your judgment. He's good at this, remember? We sat there for an hour while she pulled up his LinkedIn on her laptop. Clean profile, epic employee badges, endorsements, a few professional photos. But something felt off. No old college tags, no family photos from before he moved to Madison, no messy birthday posts from friends. It was polished too, polished like a resume someone had scrubbed and curated. People aren't this perfect online unless they're hiding something, Caitlin said, half joking but dead serious. Or unless they're selling something. I stared at the screen, the knot in my chest tightening into something sharper. For the first time since the party, I wasn't just uneasy. I was angry. And that anger felt like the first clear thing I'd felt in months. A few days after that night in the backyard, the silence between Mom and me felt heavier than any argument. I chose a quiet afternoon when Jared was at the office and Dad was out running errands. Mom was in the living room flipping through fabric swatches for the rehearsal dinner tablecloths, humming softly like everything was still on track. I sat across from her on the couch and waited until she looked up. Mom, I need you to listen to me about what I saw on Jared's laptop, I said, keeping my voice even. She sighed, setting the swatches aside. Whitney, I thought we put this behind us. You were tired, emotional. Weddings do that. I described it again step by step, no exaggeration, the open spreadsheet tab titled with my full name, the line-by-line list of my inheritance from Grandma, the stock holdings, the IRA balance, the small emergency fund. I told her about the column with projected dates circled in red, starting right after the wedding ceremony, and the header that read, Access Modifications, Post-Marriage. She listened, fingers laced in her lap, expression patient but unmoved. When I stopped, she leaned forward slightly. Honey, you're under so much pressure right now. Jared deals with numbers and projections all day at Epic. He was likely just sketching out possibilities, how our family's finances could merge, what security we could build for the future. It's responsible, not sinister. He's thinking like a partner should. Mom, it wasn't vague possibilities, I said, voice rising despite myself. It had exact figures from my accounts, dates, a timeline. She shook her head gently. You're projecting fear onto something innocent. After the last two men who let you down, I understand why you're guarded. But Jared is different. He's committed. He's kind. He's building something real. Don't sabotage this over a misunderstanding. It would hurt the whole family. The word sabotage landed like a slap. So I'm the one hurting us by noticing he's cataloging my money like it's already his. Her tone sharpened just a touch, the edge she reserved for when she felt cornered. I only want you happy and secure. I've watched you struggle alone too long. Jared is a good man. Pushing this narrative could cancel the rehearsal dinner next week. Disappoint the guests I've already invited. Waste the deposit I put down on the venue. I'm not going to let paranoia ruin what could be a beautiful chapter for you. She picked up the swatches again, resuming her sorting as though the matter was closed. I stared at her, the woman who'd once driven through blizzards to pick me up from college when I was sick, now dismissing my fear like it was a childish tantrum. The betrayal settled in my chest, cold, sharp, irreversible. She wasn't just doubting me. She was choosing the illusion over my safety. I stood up without a word and walked out. In the car, the lake road blurring past the window, I called Caitlin before the anger could cool into paralysis. She shut me down completely, I told her. Told me I'm paranoid that Jared's just planning our future. Then she went right back to picking tablecloths, like nothing happened. Caitlin was quiet for a beat. That stings. But we don't stop. I dug deeper last night, found some old forum posts on personal finance boards. Anonymous stories about a guy in his mid-20s tech job charming dating women a bit older with family money. The pattern sweet at first, then probing questions about assets, introducing a financial advisor friend who pushes joint paperwork. One woman backed out after similar weird vibes and saved herself a fortune. No names attached, but the details line up too neatly to be coincidence. My knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. We need proof he can't explain away. Exactly, she said. Time to go professional. A private investigator who specializes in this stuff. Someone discreet, local. You in the road ahead stretched straight toward the horizon. For once, the uncertainty felt like fuel instead of fear. Yes, I said. Let's find out who he really is. I didn't hesitate after that conversation with Caitlin. The anger had hardened into resolve, and waiting felt like handing over control. I called Michael Torres the next morning, our family lawyer, the one who'd quietly managed Grandma's estate when the rest of us were still grieving. His office was tucked in a quiet building downtown, all polished wood and soft leather chairs, the kind of place that reassures you before you even speak. I sat across from him and told the story straight, the spreadsheet, the exact figures from my accounts, the red circled dates aligned perfectly with the wedding timeline. I didn't embellish. I didn't need to. Michael leaned back, fingers drumming once on the desk. This isn't casual curiosity, he said. If there's premeditation, we treat it seriously. I recommend Brian Keller, private investigator, Wisconsin-based ex-detective with a reputation for discretion. He specializes in financial background checks and asset protection cases. Timeline 3 to 5 weeks for thorough work. Cost around $1,000 to start, more if we need deeper traces. But if this is what it looks like, that money buys peace of mind. I signed the agreement before I left the office. Brian Keller met me at a neutral coffee shop near the Capitol Square, mid-50s, close-cropped gray hair, eyes that missed nothing. He listened without interrupting, jotting notes in a small spiral pad. I'll pull public records, credit inquiries, where legal, corporate filings, social media archives, and any civil or family court mentions, he explained. Patterns show in settlements, business ties, or inconsistencies in timelines. Keep your routine normal, no confrontations, no questions that tip him off. I'll update you weekly. The next 3 weeks dragged like wet cement. Jared went on as if nothing had changed. Morning runs along the lake path, casual suggestions for honeymoon spots in Door County, even helping Mom pick wines for the rehearsal dinner. Each ordinary moment felt like a performance I was forced to watch. I smiled, nodded, kept my distance in small ways. Longer work hours, extra errands. While inside, I counted down the days. Brian's call came on a rainy Thursday evening. I stepped into the garage so the sound wouldn't carry. Results are in, he said, voice level. Your fiancé has a prior alias Jared Klein used in a civil suit 5 years ago in Illinois. Ex-partner, woman in her late 30s with inherited commercial property. Allegation he misrepresented documents to gain access to joint funds, then liquidated portions. Settled privately, amount sealed, but the complaint filing and attorney correspondence confirm a pattern of deliberate financial probing. No criminal charges, but the civil record is clear. He continued without pause. More immediate concern, he co-owns a Delaware-numbered company with Lauren Hayes. She's 42, previously a financial advisor at a Chicago firm, left abruptly. No reference letter, no advancement. Now self-listed as freelance consultant. The company shows low activity on public filings, but transaction traces reveal inbound wires from various sources, then outbound to offshore accounts. I obtained portions of email chains through legal open source methods, references to Sanders target, marriage certificate as trigger, signature on modification docs by week 2, prioritize liquid assets transfer, and exit within 60 days, post-event. They've outlined your accounts in detail, exact balances, account numbers, and mapped the steps to gain access via marital status. The garage light buzzed overhead. My hand trembled on the phone. They intend to move fast, Brian added. Standard tactic: wed quietly, amend trust or account authority, drain available cash, relocate before red flags appear. Lauren's role is facilitator advising on paperwork timing evasion. I thanked him, voice steady despite the roar in my ears. The pieces locked together with sickening clarity. Jared's charm wasn't accidental. It was scripted. Lauren wasn't a casual acquaintance. She was the silent partner. I forwarded the full report to Michael immediately. He called back within minutes. This crosses into actionable territory. We can seek protective orders, but the cleanest path is evidence of attempt in progress. The rehearsal dinner is soon. If Lauren attends as his consultant, we have opportunity for direct observation and documentation. I sat on the garage step, rain tapping the roof, staring at the report attachments, court dockets, redacted emails, corporate registrations. The fear that had gripped me since the party had burned away, leaving something steady and cold in its place. I was no longer the one waiting to be protected. I was the one preparing to end it. The rehearsal dinner took place at a boutique venue hugging the shore of Lake Mendota private room, with tall windows framing the darkening water, candle flames dancing on every table, 40 guests wrapped in the soft glow of what should have been a perfect evening. The air carried the scent of rosemary-crusted lamb and fresh-baked rolls. Jazz drifted low from hidden speakers, mingling with easy laughter and the clink of silverware. Toasts came one after another, Dad lifting his glass to new beginnings, relatives sharing gentle stories about childhood summers by the lake, Jared standing to speak with that practiced warmth everyone adored. He thanked Mom for the flawless evening, kissed my cheek, and said something about building a life together that feels this right. Mom moved through the room like she owned the light, smiling, hugging, accepting compliments on every detail she'd overseen. She looked happy, truly happy. Lauren Hayes arrived during cocktails. Jared introduced her casually as the consultant who double-checked the venue contracts. She was composed mid-40s, dark hair swept back, carrying a slim leather folder. She smiled politely, shook hands, blended into the background like she belonged there. I had shown Mom Brian's report the afternoon before. She'd sat at the kitchen table, pages spread out, reading in silence. When she reached the emails and transaction traces, her hand trembled slightly. She looked up at me, not with the familiar dismissal, but with eyes wide and wet. "If this is real," she whispered, "we end it tonight. No arguments. No, let's not spoil things." She was ready. We kept watch all evening. Lauren stayed near Jared, brief murmurs in corners, quick nods across tables. When dessert plates were cleared and guests began drifting toward the bar, Jared excused himself. "Just a quick call with the office." Lauren followed 30 seconds later, slipping down the side corridor toward the small private meeting room reserved for vendor wrap-up. I met Mom's gaze across the room. We moved without a word, weaving past laughing relatives down the dim hallway. The door to room 12 was closed but not latched. Voices leaked through, clear, calm, businesslike. "Lauren, first signature on page 7 by Friday. That's the modification form. Once Whitney signs, we submit Monday. Banks treat it as routine joint authority, post-marriage no flags." Jared's reply even and confident: "Liquid assets first, the brokerage IRACDS. Property deeds take longer. We pull what's easy, then disappear before anyone questions the distribution." Lauren David has no signing authority anymore. Trust shifted everything to Whitney at 30. Even if he suspects he can't intervene legally until the funds are gone. By then, We're out 2 states, maybe overseas. Jared gave that soft laugh again, the one guests had complimented all night. Portugal's still the quietest option. No extradition headaches for amounts under $1 million. My pulse hammered in my ears. I pulled my phone from my pocket, switched to voice memo, pressed record. The red light glowed steady. Mom stood beside me, one hand gripping my arm, breath shallow but controlled. We listened as they ran through the rest, exact balances, transfer sequences, contingency if the old man got curious too soon. The moment their voices paused for breath, I stepped forward and knocked 3 sharp raps. Silence inside. Then the door swung open. Jared stood framed in the doorway, phone still in hand, smile starting automatically. Behind him, Lauren sat at the small table, folder open, pen hovering. Whitney, Jared said smoothly. I heard every word about my assets. I said, voice low but clear, holding up the phone so the recording light was unmistakable. The signatures, the liquids first, the exit plan. Lauren Hayes, the consultant who's been mapping how to empty what's mine. His smile collapsed in slow motion, confusion, calculation, then blank shock. Lauren's face went ashen. She started to rise, then froze, as if the chair had pinned her. Mom stepped up beside me, voice steady despite everything. We have the investigator's full report. Emails, company records, the Illinois settlement. It stops here. I didn't shout. I didn't need to. I'm calling the police now. Local first. If there's interstate wire involved, federal follows. You're not walking out until they arrive. Jared tried once. This is a misunderstanding, we can explain, but the words faltered when I dialed 911 on speaker. The dispatcher picked up quickly. I gave the address, described attempted financial deception in progress, mentioned the live recording as evidence. Sirens approached within minutes. 2 local officers arrived first, then a detective Michael had alerted. They listened to the playback on my phone, Lauren's checklist, Jared's timeline. The Portugal reference, faces hardening as the words filled the hallway. They took statements from me and Mom, then entered the room. Lauren reached for her phone. An officer gently but firmly stopped her. Jared stared at the floor, silent now. The folder on the table, modification forms with my name pre-filled on page 7, was photographed page by page, then bagged as evidence. Both were read their rights and detained, cuffs clicking softly. No drama, no scene in front of the guests. Mom returned to the dining room first, face composed quietly, asking everyone to give us privacy. Whispers spread, but no one pressed. I stayed in the corridor until the officers led Jared and Lauren out the side exit, quiet, efficient, final. The lake outside the windows lay still, stars beginning to prick the sky. I stood there, phone still warm in my hand, the recording saved the weight that had pressed on my chest for weeks, finally cracking open. For the first time in months, I could breathe. The officers escorted Jared and Lauren through the side exit, the door clicking shut behind them with a finality that echoed longer than it should have. In the dining room, the candles had burned low, wax pooling on the tables like forgotten tears. Guests hovered in uncertain groups, some whispering, others checking phones, the jazz long since silenced. I walked to the center of the room, the same spot where Jared had toasted us an hour earlier, and spoke clearly enough for everyone to hear. The wedding is off, I said. There won't be a ceremony tomorrow. I need space, and I need truth. Thank you for coming tonight. I'm sorry it ended like this. The room went still. Mom's hand rose to her mouth. Tears came instantly, silent at first, then spilling over as her shoulders shook. Dad froze mid-step, glass halfway to his lips, face draining of color until he looked 10 years older in seconds. A murmur rippled through the relatives, soft gasps, a few "oh no"s, but no one interrupted. No one asked for more. They felt the gravity of what had just happened, even if they didn't know the details. I didn't stay to comfort anyone. I stepped out onto the deck, letting the night air wrap around me like a blanket I hadn't realized I needed. Mom followed after a minute mascara-streaked voice cracking on my name. Whitney. I was wrong. I didn't see. I thought I was protecting you. I know, I answered quietly, but you chose the picture over the reality. She cried harder than raw, unguarded sobs that carried across the water. Dad appeared behind her eyes, glassy, reaching for her arm. He didn't speak. He couldn't. For once, the man who always had a practical solution had nothing. The case moved swiftly after that. Michael worked with the detective. The recording Brian's report, the seized documents formed an airtight chain. Jared and Lauren were charged with attempted theft by deception and financial misconduct. Felony counts under Wisconsin law escalated to federal wire fraud when interstate transfers in their Delaware company came to light. Jared was terminated from Epic within the week. The company's compliance team doesn't tolerate headlines like that. Lauren faced reopened civil suits from previous clients plus restitution orders stacking up fast. Bail was posted, but the protective order kept them away. I blocked every channel, phone, email, social, erased every trace. There was nothing worth salvaging. With my family, the break wasn't as clean-cut. Mom called every day, at first tearful apologies, offers to cover legal costs, even volunteering for victim impact statements. She hired her own counsel to assist the prosecution, sat through depositions, paid for document copies without hesitation. Her remorse was real deep, and it hurt to see. But Dad? He wavered. Maybe Jared had an explanation, he said once during a strained phone call. People can change. That single line severed something. I didn't argue. I just pulled back short texts. No visits. No weekly dinners. 6 weeks later, I moved out of the Maple Bluff house to a small apartment downtown with a sliver of lake view from the balcony. It felt like reclaiming air I'd forgotten how to breathe. I poured myself into work, extra shifts, new projects, anything to fill the hours productively. Mornings, I ran the lake path, the steady slap of shoes on pavement drowning out old echoes. Caitlin joined most days. We'd talk about nothing and everything, old college pranks, the absurdity of dating apps, the best coffee spots in town. Last month, we booked tickets to Portugal, not the escape Jared had joked about, but our own slow mornings in Lisbon wine in the Douro Valley. No schedules, no shadows. It felt like taking back a place that had been tainted. The real lessons came quietly in the spaces between. Instincts don't shout. They whisper persistently until you listen. Mine had been murmuring for months, and I'd almost drowned them out to preserve a fragile peace. Family love can be blinding when it's wrapped in good intentions. Mom wanted security for me so badly she ignored the warning signs. But protection isn't ignoring red flags. It's facing them head-on even when it hurts the people you love. Guarding your assets isn't mistrust. It's dignity. Real love arrives honestly, no hidden spreadsheets, no pre-filled forms, no timelines for disappearance. It stays when questions are asked, when truths surface. It doesn't demand signatures to prove it's safe. I chose solitude over forced reconciliation. I chose clarity over comfort. And in that choice, I discovered something stronger than forgiveness, a life built on my own terms where my voice is the loudest one in the room. The lake still sparkles outside my window every morning. Some days it reminds me of what was lost. Most days it reminds me what was saved me awake, listening, finally free. Thank you for listening to this story on Revenge Blaze. If it resonated with you, drop a like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more real-life stories of strength, betrayal, and coming out stronger on the other side. See you in the next one. Take care.